All right, everybody, what is going on? Good afternoon. We've got another video today, and I want to talk a little bit about Jalen Milroe. I want to talk a little bit about Seattle's third string quarterback, and I know that typically when you're reduced to talking about a team's third string quarterback, it means you run out of things to talk about, but in this case, our third string quarterback's actually kind of interesting and compelling. And if you guys have been paying attention to this team over the last year plus, you know why. But let's talk a little bit about Jalen Milroe. Let's talk about what's going on with him. And let's talk about why the next 2 months are going to be massive for him. Let's discuss why Jalen Milroe is going to be under a serious spotlight, maybe even an initial career-defining spotlight for these next 2 months. This video is sponsored by PrizePicks, and I got this tweet up here on screen, and this is about a month old now, this comment from Mike McDonald on Seattle Sports, talking about Milroe trying to figure out how to utilize his athleticism, whether or not they're still trying to do that. And McDonald's answer basically kind of sounding like they're thinking about Jalen Milroe in the long term. They're not thinking about trying to get a little bit out of him right now. They're thinking about trying to get a lot out of him later. So this kind of lines up with the expectations that I think most people have had of Jalen Milroe when we drafted him. This was going to take a while. And maybe things have been completely blown up by the fact that Sam Darnold has played as well as he has and accomplished what he's accomplished. I don't know. But here we are going into year 2. Jalen Milroe was drafted a little bit more than 14 months ago. And we are looking at a situation here where at the moment he doesn't necessarily have a lot to do. But we are going into this training camp and then preseason where the guys in front of Milroe have nothing to prove, really. Sam Darnold made his second Pro Bowl, had a second good season, and won the Super Bowl. Sam Darnold has nothing left to prove. Drew Lock, he's a quality backup quarterback. At this point, there's no reason to believe he'll ever be more than that, but there's no reason to believe he's less than that. He's one of the better backups in the league, but if he's your starter, you're in trouble. So those two guys, we know what's up. And the guy we don't know what's up with is Jalen Milroe. And the reason why I'm making this video is because, number one, some of the reports that came out of training camp, by which I mean the mini camp and the OTAs, indicated that Milroe did not look good at all. And this is interesting because if you remember last year, the OTAs, one of the highlights that came out of those sessions was the fact that Jalen Milroe was making progress and looking really good, and people were really impressed. And that was very much contrasted this year, where the word out of OTAs was that Milroe did not look like he was improving. It looked like he was going the wrong way, and it didn't look good. And normally we would blow this off as just him still learning because we knew this was going to be a long-term project. But there are people out there who are credible, who have sources, who know things, who don't really feel that way. If you like sports, then the best way to make them even better and more exciting is using the PrizePicks app, where it always feels good to be right. PrizePicks makes daily fantasy simple. Just pick more or less on your favorite players and build lineups with a few taps. Whatever sport you're into, and obviously we are now firmly into the NFL offseason, so we're all about baseball. We got some basketball, we got some hockey, whatever it is you like. PrizePicks gives you a fun way to stay locked in while you're watching. Definitely make sure to use the promo code HMA. PrizePicks is hooking up users with $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. If you use that promo code, that is HMA. I've had a great time on PrizePicks so far, so definitely get on over to it, check it out, and make sure to get your lineups. And don't forget about Team Picks, where you can pick winners, spreads, and totals on any major game. So download the app now, use HMA, and get on over to Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. And remember, always gamble responsibly. And there are two people that I know of who are pretty well respected in these circles, Corbin Smith and Dan Viennes, who have both speculated, not straight up said, but they have speculated that what Jalen Milroe does over these next couple of months, mostly the preseason, but also, of course, training camp, will determine whether or not Seattle views him as part of their future. And that would make this a very important couple months in Jalen Milroe's career. And I do wonder if maybe he is, I don't know about playing for his job. I don't know if we're there at that point, but I wonder if it is going to impact whether or not we view him as an eventual quarterback solution. Because next year really should be the year where we start to find out. So you think about the timeline a little bit here. Drew Lock is a free agent next year. He's probably gone as long as we can find another backup quarterback. And nominally, Milroe should be that backup. If we have to go out and get somebody else, then so be it. Or if we bring back Drew Lock, then that too. But Jalen Milroe, I'm sure the plan was for him to step up and become that backup quarterback next season. Even if we kept Sam Darnold at that point, which right now I imagine that we will, although nothing's guaranteed. And then there would be a conversation to be had past that point on whether or not Milroe would become the starter. So I think there is going to be a decision made this offseason, because the thing is, these choices the team has to make next season are going to come before mini camps and OTAs and practice and training camp, right? They're going to have to make a decision on Drew Lock. They're going to have to make a decision on signing or drafting another quarterback without having seen Milroe in year 3 yet, because that stuff comes after. So these next couple of months where we've got training camp starting, I think Milroe reports on the 24th with all the other veterans. And then we have training camp. And then you've got 3 preseason games in August. You've got home against Dallas. You've got at Tennessee. You've got at Kansas City. I think you have one joint practice with Tennessee mixed in there. Like I said, Darnold not really got much to prove at this point. We know what he is. We know what he can do. This is an offense he's pretty darn familiar with. It's a supporting cast he's pretty familiar with. We don't need to see a lot there. We don't need to see a lot with Drew Lock. We know what he is, and he's not likely part of this team's long-term plans beyond this season anyway. So bottom line is you take a look at this preseason, it all lines up for Jalen Milroe to have maximum opportunities to show what he can do. And you think about the timeline. You think about the fact that a decision is probably going to have to be made on Sam Darnold in maybe March or April of next season. And then you think about the Drew Lock thing. You think about the fact that, and I'll get to this more in a minute, next year's draft has a ton of quarterbacks in it. This is probably the moment where Milroe needs to prove that he can at least make progress. Because that's the thing. Not playing that well or making mistakes is fine. But the issue, from what I've heard, and look, I'm not there, obviously. And even if I was there, I wouldn't be there for most of it, because most of it happens behind closed doors. But the sense I'm getting is that he's not getting better. And that is a pretty big problem. So when I think about Jalen Milroe and the thing that I said a couple years or a year ago when we got him, and the thing that a lot of people said is you got to give him 2 years before you make any kind of a judgment. You've got to let him practice for 2 years without worrying about playing quarterback in an NFL game. And I still think that's probably the case. But I also think that there is some standard you can hold him to now that we're in year 2. There should be progress. There should be improvements. And based on what I heard from OTAs, there isn't. And let's remember here, and look, it's early. Things can change. Not all these guys are going to declare. But if you look at the list of quarterbacks that are possibly going to be available in the 2027 draft, it's a very long list. Like, ProDraftScouting.com, which is not a site that I use a ton, but just to give an example of how much is going to be out there. And obviously your eyes are going to get pulled to kind of the top of the list. But look at these guys who might be available in late day 2 or early day 3 or even later in day 3, right? Like, remember, Brandon Sorsby, who I already made a video about, he's going to be in this draft now too. So that's just one more guy who's going to be really interesting. You're going to get, Connor Wegman of Houston. If he has a bounce back year, he could be covetable. Nico Iamaliva, if he has a bounce back year, that's an immensely talented dude. John Mateer of Oklahoma, if he has a big year, something to watch out for. Chambliss and Ole Miss, he's really good. Even somebody like well, I'm sorry, let me scroll down here. He's listed here somewhere, but you get down to the bottom here and everything's a long shot. But Malachi Nelson, there was definitely a time where there was hype there, and it's faded away. But Malachi Nelson, unique and fun talent on some level. And look, this list, it's way too early to take it that seriously, but they have 40 guys listed here who they give draftable grades as of right now. Now, some of those guys won't declare. Some of those guys are going to fall off a cliff or get injured and not be draftable. But the point is, there's a very good chance this draft is going to be pretty quarterback thick in a way that some drafts are not. And unlike some drafts that are very top heavy and then have a big drop off after like 4 or 5 guys, this draft could have some pretty strong points later on, round 4, round 5. And think about all the picks the Seahawks have. So if there's an opportunity to kind of reset the developmental quarterback spot in Seattle and Milroe isn't showing progress, I think this team could take that spot. There's a lot of interesting stuff you could do with all the picks we have here. So basically what I'm trying to say is this offseason is not big for Jalen Milroe in the sense that he's trying to win the starting job, or even necessarily that he's trying to win the backup job. I don't think either expectation would be very reasonable for him. But I do think there is a reasonable expectation that Jalen Milroe get better and prove that he at least deserves the roster spot that we are giving him, because a lot of teams don't carry 3 quarterbacks on their active roster. A lot of teams carry 2. We carry 3. That's one more player we can't carry at another position because we believe Milroe's going to be something. And I don't believe Milroe's roster spot is in danger here, but I do think that if they don't see something they like in these upcoming preseason games from him, there's a very realistic chance that the team decides we've got to find another developmental quarterback. Milroe, we took our shot, but we don't think it's going to work out anymore. All right, let me know what you guys think. I know that there are some big Milroe fans out there. I know that there are some people who really don't like him. It's very polarizing around here in general, I think, when it comes to Jalen Milroe. I've been pessimistic. I remain pessimistic. But these next 2 months are big. And if he can make steps forward, I think this team can be convinced that he's worth keeping around, if for no other reason than giving yourself a little bit of leverage over Darnold in future negotiations. You don't feel like you have to just give in immediately on everything. All right, I'm going to go and get on out of here. Go Hawks. Let me know what you guys think. I know this is a contentious topic, but I made a video last month talking about the reports from OTAs about how Milroe did not look very good and was underachieving even by a low standard. And a lot of people were pretty plugged in on that. So I want to continue the conversation. Do you think that Milroe's future rides on these next couple months? Because that's what some people are saying, and that's what I'm starting to think. All right, go Hawks. See you guys soon.